my name is Colleen Brzezowski, and I sit on the Education Committee for the International Board of CITE, and we're working on the CITP exam. I'm here with Mellisa Soto, who was very involved in the CITE Texas study group last year. Mellisa, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Mellisa Soto. Last year I was VP of events for CITE Texas. This year I am VP of strategy. And the CITP study group was a concept we had developed when we learned that Global was doing the course through the Knowledge Center and offering a discounted rate for the exam. So we decided we were going to do a book club format and launch a study group to see how successful it was going to be.
Wonderful, good. So the Certified Incentive Travel Professional certification is really meant for mid-level individuals involved in incentive travel that have been doing the job for at least 5 years. So for them, many of this is day-to-day practice. They do this every day. It's common knowledge. And this exam really just puts the cap on what they're already doing. As we've heard, it's not a memorization test. It's not like the CMP where you need to spend countless hours memorizing definitions and analyzing different key points to a subject. It's understanding all of those different concepts and how you apply them to your job. Is that what you found from taking the exam?
Exactly. It was more about knowledge than it was about memorization, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, the exam is open to everybody in our global population and both sides of the industry, supplier, buyer. However, because the exam has to be written from one standpoint to make it fair for everybody, the exam is written from the standpoint of a North American buyer. So that's something to keep in mind as well. And if you're not a North American buyer, it's a great way to kind of keep that in the back of your head as you're studying and saying, well, maybe I don't know that much about technology from a North American buyer perspective. Mm-hmm. I'm going to reach out to somebody to get some answers on that. And I think that's where your study group came in handy and really helped provide some new perspective for people.
That's correct. We had a good mix of suppliers and buyers from Canada and the US, and it was interesting to hear their thoughts and feedback on the way that they did things and the way they interpreted questions so that we were all on the same page.
Sure, great. Now, CITE does provide some materials through the Knowledge Center. There is a CITP online preparation course, and there's 9 different modules in that. Within that, you can also go to the white papers and motivate articles. There's a ton of knowledge and information available there. Again, not memorization, but just understanding here are some different ways to think about things. So tell me a little bit about what you did with that Knowledge Center information and how you used it to create your study group.
Well, I went through the modules, week by week and over the modules, actually, we use them as a baseline, okay, knowing that obviously it wasn't going to be memorization. But with those questions, there were things that could be interpreted differently from a supplier or from a buyer. We used the questions like you would in a book club. We threw out the questions and then we discussed them. So we gave the questions earlier in the week so that they would go through the module, the white papers and everything that they need, come up with their own answers. And then when we did our study group, we discussed it as a group. Like, yes, we did read the answers to know that we had the correct answers, but then we would go into depth with some questions and explain them or pick them apart. Or if so, a buyer had a question or a supplier had a question, they could ask and we could explain how we arrived at the answers that we arrived at.
That's fantastic. I think, that discussion is really what is key. You can go through and read the answers right. And, easily do the flashcard format, but that doesn't really develop the skills and help you understand that North American buyer perspective that the exam is written through. So that discussion and interaction really helps you to think about how you interpret the information, how you put it to use, so that when you do sit for the exam and it's about the knowledge and not just memorization of information, that you're able to implement that.
That is correct. And as long as you have an understanding of the material that was presented and how it was used in a real life situation, you'd be fine. I mean, I didn't spend any time memorizing anything. I read through the questions again the last day, right before the exam, to make sure that I had a good understanding of everything that there was, which we covered in each session for our study group.
Sure, absolutely. That's great. And we are so grateful to you because you took the time to go through all those modules, come up with questions and answers, and have very, very graciously made those available to other chapters to utilize for their study groups to help have some different points of discussion and topics. And just so I don't miss any, I'm going to read them here, the 9 different modules. There's strategic planning, incentive program design, sales, professional development, program management, technology, financial management, CSR and sustainability, and then risk and crisis management.
Yes.
So again, just looking at that topic as a supplier, your opinion and thoughts and how you look at those different things are going to be very different than a buyer's perspective. So I could see where that discussion could probably be pretty lively at times too.
Oh, it was. It was. It was a lot of fun.
Good. So what do you think with your study group made it so successful? You said the discussion.
I think it was the discussion, and it was the people that kept coming back week after week and, shared their opinions and their thoughts. It was, and some of us had more experience in certain areas than the other, or more expertise in certain areas. And while that was shared and discussed, it enabled all of us to learn more.
That's wonderful. Now, did you hear any feedback from participants in your study group or things that you found on your own just from putting together those question and answer guides of why they found it so beneficial, or what they maybe discovered that they wouldn't have learned if they just did it on their own?
Again, the feedback that we got was everybody was like, well, none of that material was on the test. Well, yes, it all was on the test. It was just in a different way. And then there were a lot of people that said, if it weren't for the study group and the discussions that we had, I wouldn't have understood this, or I wouldn't have understood how they arrived at that. I mean, we had a pretty good success rate in our chapter, and quite a few of our people from our study group took the test with other chapters.
Okay, great. So then how did you set that up? Obviously it was during pandemic times, so it was virtual, yes, which actually works out well in this type of scenario, because then you can bring in people from for some of our European or Asia Pacific chapters, you could bring in a North American buyer to be a speaker.
That is correct. Like I said, we had people from all over, not just people from our chapter.
That's great.
Belong to a site chapter, we allowed them to participate in.
Wonderful. Good. So how often did you meet?
We met once a week.
Okay.
For an hour.
Okay.
And it was Tuesday afternoon at 4:00. It just seemed to have worked good for everybody. It wasn't in the middle of the day. It was something that was the end of the day. And even if we finished early, going through the questions and questions, we would sidebar on other topics or stuff from previous, sessions that gave us trouble or that we wanted more explanation on. So we did use the full hour to bounce things off of each other and discuss, the exam.
Okay, great. And then I assume you requested everybody, if they could, to have cameras on and interact
Yes.
and engage.
Yes, we did. And it was very interactive and very engaging. And the last couple of weeks or the last couple of sessions, we did a couple of bonus sessions after for anything that we might have missed or people wanted more clarification on.
Okay.
We brought in people that had already taken the CITP exam so that they could give their feedback on what they thought was useful and what not to waste your time on.
That's great.
Everybody said the same thing. This is a knowledge-based test. It is not memorization.
Yep. When I sat for it as well, I reached out to a few people that had taken it and just said, but I know you can't give me answers or questions even, but what was it like? And what was your experience? And everyone said, don't get too freaked out by the fact that it's an exam, because you know this. You've been doing this a long time, even if it's 5 years or 20 years, you've been doing this a long time, and it's common knowledge. And if you really think about the question as to how would you react to this as a North American buyer, what would make sense? It was much more, everybody I talked to said, don't let the fact that it's an exam make you nervous.
I think one of the key things that we heard over and over was, don't overthink it. You know it, don't overthink it.
Yep. I would agree. So for the study group, did you have a certain group size that you would recommend to chapters would be a good group size?
Well, we originally started out with like 60 people, and some of those people came and went, like I said, and we had a core of maybe 25, 30 that were regular.
Okay.
I mean, I think it doesn't matter as long as everybody's interactive. You know, and even if they're not, and they're just soaking it all up, they will come back to you with something or an opinion or a discussion at some point. I have to say, everybody was very open and discussed, you know, a lot of different things in our chapter. I myself learned a lot from those in the study group.
That's awesome. Now, you mentioned that you brought in some guest speakers, people that had either taken the exam before or some other experts in different areas. Can you touch a little bit on the type of topics that they spoke about and how you recruited them, and if they had an agenda, or how do chapters go about finding these guest speakers?
If you look on your board, I'm sure you're going to find a lot of people that have already taken the exam, which is basically where I started. And, you know, some were suppliers and some were buyers. I mean, and some had certain knowledge in, you know, like return on investment or sustainability or anything that get a little tricky, you know, and I think that's key. Just listening to what they had to say was just awesome. I mean, and everybody's like, well, what's an example? Give us an example of a test question. Well, we can't. First off, don't remember, just don't overthink it. Don't memorize the modules. It's knowledge-based. You already know it. Trust your instincts.
Absolutely. And I think within your own board, and then now that the chapters are so much more integrated through the chapter leader calls and the president calls and the chapter function chats, that if someone says, hey, our study group has said we really need some help with technology or risk management, does anybody know of anyone? I'm sure there will be
a lot of
flurry of people that would be willing to help and give their insights on that. So
I agree.
Yeah. Were there any other resources in the Knowledge Center that you found to be really helpful, or general site materials that were useful?
The white papers and in Motivate, a lot of the, there was a lot of little things that, there was a couple of modules outside of the prep course that were recommended on the prep course that we all did. Okay. Because it was from another perspective, and they were very helpful. I wish I could remember, but I know they're on the recommended reading from the white papers.
Perfect. And good to keep in mind as well that as of right now, 2021, there are no questions related to pandemic situations or pandemic protocol, and
That's a good thing.
that will continue. So again, something to keep in mind as you're talking with the participants in the study group, that you don't have to overthink that either. If they're talking about a buffet, you don't need to panic, because it was
That's good to know, though. It's good to know.
Yes, absolutely. Are there other general topics that you found that the study group provide? If someone said, gosh, I really don't know if I want to commit 8 or 9 hours to participate in a study group, I'm just going to read all of this on my own. What would you say to them?
I would tell them that, of course, they were free to do so, but I think that the most beneficial part of our study group, it wasn't just going over the questions, it wasn't just going over the material, it was the discussions and the knowledge amongst industry peers that really got us to where we needed to be. I mean, and I've heard from people who didn't join the study group and did the modules on their own, that didn't pass, that didn't have the support. And that was the whole thing. It was the support of the suppliers, the buyers, all your colleagues in the industry. I mean, they're all very knowledgeable in different areas.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point.
Take advantage of that. That's my takeaway. Take advantage of the fact that you have people to collaborate with.
Sure, absolutely. And I think just like being a member of CITE, it's an added benefit that you
Right.
now have developed even deeper relationships with people that you might not have before, that will help you down the road in your job when you may not even know that you need it.
Very
you
much
now
so.
have this extended network that's a little more, there's more depth to it than you had before. And you're also part of the exclusive CITP club. And I think that helps to open doors as well. And I think as the certification continues to grow, it is still relatively new, but as that continues to grow, more and more employers will look at that as someone that really understands the business that they're in.
Agreed.
That will help as well.
I agree. And I do have deeper relationships with those that were in the study group.
That's fantastic. Good.
Yeah.
Well, in closing, is there anything else that you'd like to share with our chapter leaders about setting up a study group or what makes it successful?
No, all I would say was just keep in mind it's experience-based, and it's the communication and the discussion that's going to make the study group successful.
Fantastic. That's great. Well, again, thank you for everything that you did. I don't think at the time you knew where it was going to lead, but we are so grateful that you've created these questions and answers and given your insights on how to create a successful study group. And I think we'll see a lot more people with CITP behind their name because of your efforts. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. It's my pleasure.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a great day. Bye.